Welcome to the Tom Bernard podcast. Tomcast, good. The Tom Bernard Tomcast. The Tom Bernard podcast with the family and
co-host Catherine Brandt.
And Andy Brandt Bernard.
Alex is not in today. Kristen Burt's not in today.
Nope.
It all works out in the end, though. Myq Kaplan's coming in at what, about a half hour?
Yeah.
He's great. I haven't seen Michael in quite some time, so it's really nice.
I think most recently he was episode 1600 something. We're currently up to 2700 something.
Holy God, we should get an award.
Yeah, we got some episodes.
It's true. We should get an award.
And we have a winner.
Oh, we do?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The winner of this week's Jack's Cafe giveaway is at Silver St. Paul, Silver St. Paul.
Which he has his DMs turned off.
Yes, I cannot DM you. So hopefully you're listening or someone you know is listening, or maybe someone can at you. I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Congratulating him right now on Dad's page.
Oh, yeah. Just add him and.
So
I think that's how it
now
works.
you're following Silver St. Paul, Tom.
There you go. That works.
Why not?
And see if he, how do I? Oh.
So if you are listening, just email tombernardpodcast@gmail.com with your name and whatever email address you want the gift card to go to. And if you're not, then I guess you don't know what I'm saying anyway.
Indeed. That works beautifully, doesn't it? You didn't bring me in the run sheet.
Oh, right. I printed it off.
Yeah, see, there's Andy.
One moment.
Dropping the ball. Because I want to talk about something very directly. So Andy's got to be on when we're doing this. And I don't want to do it when Myq Kaplan's here. It's just an observation I've made in the last 4 or 5 days. Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make sure I got that first one in. Oh, it's Bilski anyway. So, Bilski. I just want to make sure I got Bilski up here. We'll be there in 1 second, I promise. There's one.
All right. I have returned.
Okay, you have returned, and we'll get, okay, there's two. Kristen Burt's on there. There's Bilski. We got Bilski covered. Okay.
We got Bilski.
So, again, I know how things get around, here and all the rest of it, and I am not criticizing anyone. I'm not taking shots at anyone, but you would be amazed when Kath and I have been gone for 7 months, and we got back. The thing that I noticed immediately is the way over the top approach to politics in the state of Minnesota.
Yep.
That's all anyone talks about. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I got back and everything that I read in the newspapers, everything on television is how the other side is horrible and we hate them. Why are people so involved here? Like in Florida, you never hear about politics. Nobody ever talks about them.
Well,
True.
they will if you want to, but they also don't avoid you if you have a different opinion. I think it's because we've just had a DFL trifecta for just so long, and they've just had it their own way.
We've been dominated by one party for ages and ages, and it's just made people weird.
I think most Minnesotans are just like, our schools were good, our roads were good, healthcare was reasonable, and we had good healthcare here, and they were happy.
Mm-hmm.
But now the schools are not doing so well.
They're not good at all anymore.
The taxes are going up and up and up.
Okay,
and
an
we're
example
getting
of that.
Less and less.
An example of that: St. Paul City has a tax of almost one click from 10%.
I think Minneapolis does too.
Oh my God!
Isn't it like 9.8% here now?
It's 9.8 in St. Paul.
What is it in New York City? Because I know that they raised it around 10, 11%, and everybody just started going to New Jersey.
New York City is 2. It's a
sales tax.
Progressive. Oh, sales tax?
Yeah, sales tax.
Oh. Let's see. New York City sales tax.
Minneapolis too.
8.875.
So they're
Why
right
not just
there
do
too.
8.9? I don't get it.
Yeah, but they had raised it. Once it gets around 10%, people will go another place to shop.
So it's 4% New York State, 4.5% New York City. So New York City's higher than the state sales tax.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's also a 0.375% Metropolitan Commuter Transportation District surcharge.
Yeah, almost all metropolitan areas have an extra sweet little tax thrown on there, which is interesting because West Palm Beach has an extra tax of some sort because they were running Molly's trolleys, all that free transportation all over the place, which should actually be paid for by tax dollars.
Yeah,
I mean, not tax dollars, tourist dollars.
Tourist dollars,
yeah.
I mean, there's enough tourists all over the place in Florida that we shouldn't have to pay taxes for transporting them all over.
Let's see. Minneapolis is 9.03.
9.03.
Minneapolis City itself only has a 0.5% sales tax. Hennepin has a 0.15%.
Yeah.
But then there's a special sales tax,
There it
whatever
is.
that means, of
There it is.
1.5%.
There it is.
But our state sales tax is 6.8.
That's high.
That's got to be one of the highest in
It's
the
gotta
I think
be
we're
on the
third
nation.
highest, maybe.
It's,
And there's a reason we're talking about this, because it's very, very obvious when you've been away for several months and you come back, it's very obvious that this state is so political and it's all about money. It's not
Yeah.
about being a Democrat or a Republican. It's about money. That's
Well,
all that matters.
What put the nail in the coffin for me for the DFL is the fact that they just voted down having a fraud oversight committee.
Yeah.
When we've got about $1 billion
lot of
that they
fraud.
know of in
That's all
fraud over the
money.
last 10 years.
Yep.
And
It's
I
just-
mean, it's just like in every other day, there's more fraud coming out. And it's all these, it's just so sad. It's like feeding children and disabled people. I mean, they're stealing money from
I
like
know.
the
Mhm.
most vulnerable people. It's just horrible.
Look, understand something. The reason this is so important to me, because I grew up very, very poor, and I'm not making that up. My father was institutionalized with schizophrenia. My mother was a diner waitress. We had no money, never. Now, the good part of Minnesota that I'm going to tell you about right now, ever since I've been working since I was 11 years old, I got my first job at 11 years old, and I've been making a lot of money since I was 11 years old. So the state of Minnesota did step up. It allowed me, well, I'm sure I wasn't supposed to be working at 11 years old, but Minnesota accepted me. It was the highest rated morning show in America at the time. So there's a really great part of Minnesota that we love. Look, live in a land of 15,281 lakes or whatever it is now. And most of the people, it's the far edges of the people and the money grubbers that drive me nuts in this state. And again, thank you. I've had a wonderful life, very, very successful careers, and working for Capitol Records and working on radio stations, and then the KQ morning show, and this podcast is getting better and better and better. So I am grateful, but all they talk about is money.
Well,
Politics. is what
remember
they
when the
talk
show
about.
was at its height? We actually had, for a brief moment in time, some Republicans in office.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The state wasn't nearly as partisan as it has become.
Yep.
And the reason I bring this all up today, and again, don't get me wrong, we love Minnesota. Catherine and I went for a walk this morning. It was just beautiful. Met some wonderful people on the street. I love Minnesota. I do not love the money grubbers. That's the part I don't care for. Chief O'Hara came to Minneapolis to rebuild trust, but he's shown contempt for the politics. That's the headline today. The police chief was heralded as a change maker, but he ran into what he calls extreme ideologies. Well, that's and those extreme ideologies are all based on making money or stealing money or whatever it is. So, Chief, if we can possibly get Chief O'Hara on the show, I'd love to talk to him about this, because 90% of the people in the state are wonderful, very nice. They were really kind to my family growing up. Everybody was wonderful, but we have turned into the biggest money grubbers on earth. God, people are grubby for money in this state. Why? It's a very wealthy state, isn't it?
Well, because
Relatively, I
that's it,
think.
there's no oversight.
Yeah.
If you
that's the
can
problem.
steal, they'll steal. I mean, AOC was just bitching about the fact that she cannot live on her $175,000 salary. She has a leased
There you
go.
leased Mercedes for $1,800 a month. Now, if you're
There you go.
really, really desperate, why
Yep.
are you driving around in a Mercedes? I remember she
know.
had a Tesla. I think her lease was 400. And of course, as soon as Elon Musk started getting involved in politics, she got rid of her Tesla and upgrades to a $1,800 a month lease.
Yeah.
I mean, you just listen to the people, the way they talk. They must be so insulated from the real world, and they're so surrounded by butt kissers and
Oh, yeah.
bootlickers that they
A
don't
lot of
know.
that,
They don't
yeah.
know what it's like to be a normal human being that's working
No.
and raising a family and just trying to, be left alone.
See, adjusted for price parity, Minnesota is 9th in the union for income.
Ninth.
So we're in the top
yeah.
10 we're above New York City. because
For income.
it's price parity, which means
Oh,
Yes.
so in Minnesota, compared to the rest of the United States, the average United States price parity is $1 because that's how it works. In Minnesota, it's 98 cents, which means if you make 98 cents here, you've made $1 relative to everyone in the country
okay.
because things are just very slightly cheaper here, apparently.
Yeah.
But in New York, it's $1.08. You have to make 8% more just to make as much as everyone else. And that's New York State. In this New York City, it's probably $1.75.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the number one state, Wyoming, because it's so cheap to live there.
Yeah.
Because there's so few people
Yep.
there.
Number two state, North Dakota.
Yep.
Number
Huh.
4 state, South Dakota.
There you go.
So the thing that actually seems to matter the most isn't how much you make, it's how
Taxes
affordable,
and taxes.
and taxes are a big one.
'Cause I know
Yes.
Wyoming doesn't have state tax. South Dakota
Mhm.
doesn't have state tax. North Dakota does, but I think it's low.
Yeah. So affordability is like, it's more important than how much money you actually make.
So yeah, let me be clear. I love Minnesota, always have, always will, but there's an edge to it now. Chief O'Hara came to Minneapolis to rebuild trust, but he's shown contempt for the politics. Well, I do too. I don't like the politics of people in Minnesota. It's too extreme.
Oh,
And I'm not
there's-
talking about everybody.
No.
But a lot of people in power, they're very, very far left or far right.
Well, there was just a ruckus on X about the Hopkins School District, which used to be one of the best school districts in the metropolitan area. And now I guess so many people are stoned.
Oh God,
It's
I'm
like
sure.
they smell weed everywhere. It feels unsafe. The students that actually are serious students are surrounded by people that are just high all the time, and nobody gives a shit.
Well, you can pick up on the geef smell in Florida too, though. There's a lot of smoking pot.
Well,
in
yeah, you
Florida.
walk around any down. I remember.
downtown, I
I remember in
suppose, yeah.
Manhattan 30 years ago. I was just shocked at all the little kids sitting in parks smoking weed.
Yep.
They look
Oh,
like they
yeah.
were maybe 12, 13,
Yep.
just sitting in the park smoking pot because that's what else are they going to do? I mean,
Yep.
unless you're spending money in Manhattan, there's not a lot of activities that are free, except for maybe
Right.
going to the park and playing basketball, if there's even space for that.
I will not say where this is, but again, look, when you come to Minnesota, we take walks here. Kath and I walk with Jude every day in the morning and at night, and the beautiful scenery and people saying hello. We met a couple on the street today. Could not have been nicer people.
Yeah. We
Very,
walked
very
into the
nice.
barber shop. Jude sprinted to the barber shop because they give him TREATs.
Exactly.
And he
Ah.
remembered he hasn't been there in 7 months. He like runs right over to the barber
Right.
shop.
No, it's true. And we walk in, and you would have thought I was God.
Yeah.
They were just, Tom, my God, you're back. They were all going
Missed
giving
you
me
on the
hugs.
show. Missed you on the morning show.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that kind of deal. So look, I just don't know if we can get rid of the extreme left and the extreme right, but don't listen to those people. They're in it for the money. They want your money, and that's all. I have some friends, a couple of friends, as a matter of fact, that I've talked to recently I hadn't talked to in a long time. They are nothing. It's all about how much money they got. It's like, Jesus, get off your ass and go work. Make your own money. How about that? It's just really sad. But if anybody knows Chief O'Hara, and you have to understand something. I've talked about this before. My mother was a big time Democrat, not far left, but she was a big time Democrat. Her best friend, her cousin, Lamont Dean, was a Republican, again, not far right, but a Republican, and he was a detective on the Minneapolis Police Department. So Chief O'Hara, if anybody knows Chief O'Hara or can line it up, I'd love to have him come on. And I'm not going to hammer about this, that, or the other thing. I just really wish the money grubbers in this state would shut up. Good God, it's obnoxious.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it?
No.
No, I'm talking about.
I
what?
mean, don't you think that most of the problem is, I mean,
It's money.
well, what's the old saying about the fish rots at the head
Yeah.
first?
Well, that's
And
true.
it's like, if you listen to the politicians that are at the top of the heap, they're just hateful.
Yes, they are.
I mean, Donald Trump says hateful things. Nancy Pelosi is just a bag of hate.
Yeah, that's true.
Tim Walz can't walk across the street without crying about Trump and Nazis. And I mean, he just can't even
Yeah.
stand. I think he gets up every morning and
And how much
cries
money
in
has
the
he spent?
corner about the Nazism. And
Hasn't he spent like $15 billion this year?
he blew $18 billion,
$18 billion.
and now we're in a deficit. And now they have to cut all of the stuff that they promised that our schools were fully funded.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats
Unbelievable.
didn't go to work for 3 months. This state is really a unique situation.
It really is. We still love it. Don't get us wrong. We love being here. It's the most beautiful place in the summer you can
I don't
possibly
like the
live.
politics here
But
at
we
all.
do not like the politics. It's just
No.
over the top.
It is
We're at a
so-
projected $6 billion budget deficit.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, and what I would like to know is, okay, so if we were in an $18 billion surplus, that means that you're overtaxed in the first place.
Yes.
So they must have spent over $18 billion, really.
Well, it means they spent $24 billion.
That
24
means that
billion,
they
yeah.
actually spent money that they didn't have.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
which
where
is
is it?
really
Where did
bad
it go?
governance once again.
Where
did
did
it
the
go?
24 billion go? Where is it? I don't see it.
Well, and they said that everything was fully funded and that they were congratulating each other. And Barack Obama was praising Tim Walz
Oh, of
about what a
course he
great
was.
job he did. And it's like, okay, well, you fully funded it, but it dried up in 6 months. How is that possible?
We got to go to break, and we should probably go to break with a little humor. What is with our governor wearing a shirt that I can't remember the exact quote, but he said he's wearing a T-shirt, and I don't know if somebody put it on him or
Yeah,
if he
you
was
never
really
know.
wearing it.
People have AI images of
It
him all over the
says-
place.
It says on his T-shirt, "I'm not a tough guy, but I could beat off 100 men."
He did
It's
not
obviously
have
fake.
It was
that
just, it
on.
had to be fake.
Tom.
Well, I'm just saying, I saw it
Really?
like, oh my
I mean,
God.
he's not the brightest, but he's not
Well,
the dumbest.
I don't know if he's bright enough to figure that out. I'll tell you
don't
that. He
think
just,
so.
whatever. All right, we'll take a break. Be right back in a couple of minutes. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. What's the number if they want to call in and comment, Andy?
Well, let's see. We got a text line 612-361-6622. We have a chat room. If you go to our website or our app, there's a link to it in both of those. And the call-in line is 952-977-9381.
And a good way to put this is, Catherine and I took our walk this morning, and all I did the entire walk, you can ask Catherine, is praise how beautiful Minnesota is in the summertime, how wonderful it is. We met strangers on the street. They couldn't have been nicer. We're really looking forward to, because we haven't done it yet. I mean, McCormick's we love. We love.
met another little Cavalier, King Charles.
It's another Cavalier King Charles.
They're
They're
all
like-
over the place.
I know. He's like, oh, we've got one of those too. He opens up the car door. I
Yeah,
had to go
there it
in
is.
someone's car to pet a dog.
It was wonderful. There's no question about it. So look, 95% of Minnesota, we just love. It's the politics I just cannot bear. It's disgusting here. And it's all about greed. I hate that. I want my Minnesota. Although if I ever had a Minnesota that wasn't greedy.
Well, there's no such thing as a non-greedy politician.
Well,
but-
that's true. That's true. And again, I'm not talking about 100% of the Minnesotans. I'm talking about maybe 5% of them. They screw up everything in the state. The other 95%, Uncle Tommy loves you. We'll take a break. Be right back in a couple of minutes. From Bradshaw and Bryant, Michael Bryant. What's up, Allie?
Oh, not much. Doing my usual thing of telling people they shouldn't be texting and driving. In Minnesota, you can't have your phone in your hands. You can use, hands free, but you can't have your phone in your hand for whatever reason. And that's why they made the law the way they did, so that police officers could see a phone in your hand and you got no excuse for why you got it there.
Do people know that that's the law?
I hope so. I mean, they used to follow it, and then kind of COVID kind of made people forget. And now it's like a freewheeling world out there with cell phones.
Let's say you get pulled over because you do have a phone in your hand and you're not watching where you're going. You got to be in pretty big trouble then, I would guess.
Well, the first one's not as bad. It's the multiple ones, the problem. And once people start stacking them up, then they have a big problem. And then what we're doing in car accidents is we've started bringing motions for punitive damages, because I'm trying to use the civil law any way we can to stop this, because it needs to stop.
Whenever I'd had any problems in my life, who was that I called again? It was like an MB, something like that.
Bradshaw and Bryant.
Let's take a second to talk about my bank. That'd be North American Banking Company in Bilski. As a business owner, you're always looking for opportunities to grow, and that's where North American Banking Company can help. Their business banking team offers tailored solutions, whether you're expanding your team, opening a new location, or upgrading equipment. Because they're locally owned, loan decisions are made right here in the Twin Cities, which means faster approvals and more flexibility to meet your needs. If you're ready to take your business to the next level, why not bank with my friends at North American Banking Company? Visit anybanco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Does thinking about retirement make you uncomfortable? Sometimes the anxiety for wondering if you saved enough can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that you could ease those tensions in just 48 minutes? My guy, Josh Arnold, Mr. Money Talk, can sit down with you and get you on the right track for your financial future. Josh has navigated it all when it comes to uncertain market and economic conditions, and he'll always provide straight talk. Never sugar-coated advice on how to reach the finish line with your retirement goals. Don't let your financial worries give you an ulcer or keep you from calling Josh right now. His 48-minute no-obligation consultation could be just what you need to feel better about your future. Call Josh today at 952-925-5608. Set up your free 48-minute no-obligation consultation. That's 952-925-5608. Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC Security Investment Advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments must involve risk. You know that. All comments and opinions of Josh Arnold's do not constitute investment advice. I am a paid endorser.
I believe in the kingdom come, then all the colors will
You're working?
bleed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The Tom Bernard podcast with the family and a longtime friend. I've known you how many years?
I think I came on your radio show perhaps
Oh, wow.
13 to 15 years ago.
13 to
Yeah.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I got fired. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Highest rated morning show in America for 37 years. In America was the highest rated morning show. But the politics just didn't work out for them, so they got rid of me.
Wow.
And then they told everybody I retired, which is really nice.
Wow. And here you are. You'll be here long after every other radio whole station has crumbled into the ocean, I think.
Yeah, radio is kind of coming apart at the seams, isn't it?
But you are you are reborn like the phoenix rising.
See, this is why I've always loved Myq Kaplan.
From the
right there.
ashes of the firing that you experienced.
Andy
Yeah.
said you were on episode, the first time you were on this show was episode what?
22. And to put that into context, we are currently recording episode 2781. So
Michael,
So it's
you
been a
opened the
minute.
door for us.
Incredible.
So it's been a minute.
I'll
well,
take
he was
credit.
on episode 1600 something.
Oh, that's right.
I've been here a couple times.
Yeah.
A few times,
Yeah, a few times you've been here. So
22, 1600.
Yeah, you know.
Michael, is the live comedy situation still as great as it's always been?
That's a great question, and I have many answers depending how long we have.
You got 45. You got
Okay.
an hour if you want it.
Well, so here's the analogy I always like to think of when people ask. I started doing comedy really in 2002, and the
Okay.
landscape was very different. But
Mhm.
also, in addition to the landscape being different, like I was very different. So if you ask me, like, what are audiences like now compared to when I started? I'm like, they laugh more now. But that's not about the audiences. That's about me not
Getting
being
better.
a good comedian when I
Oh.
started, because nobody's a good comedian when they
That's
start.
true.
So I feel like it's sort of like on a train. Like if imagine you're on a train and you're all the way in the back in like the let's say the cars get better and better, like first class in the front
Right.
and steerage in the back. And you start as a comedian in steerage, and you're on this, you're just in a bunch of garbage, and then you're working your way, you're fighting your way to the front, and you get a little better and a little better. And then every time you improve and you experience, growth as a human being, as an artist, as a comedian, you move forward on the train. And so the train experience, oh, this is a little more comfortable, a little more room, little like, and that, but also now the landscape outside yourself, the things you have no control over for the most part, you're like, maybe you're going through a desert, maybe you're going through a forest, maybe you like everything outside the train. So when people ask like, what's the scene like? You're like, oh, look outside. It's different now than it was. But the same way that, you can't judge any, like if you're like, oh man, how's it like to perform in this town versus this town, or the North
Right.
versus the South? Like, Bill Maher can go to the South and attract Bill Maher fans,
Yep.
and I can and the goal of being a comedian is to, some people say, to entertain anyone, but like nobody can entertain everyone.
No.
True.
So my goal is to, become the best that I can be at what I do, and then hopefully attract people to my shows that will like what I do. Obviously, gain a fan base of people who do like what I do, and find, every time I come here, like Acme is a wonderful comedy club, one of my favorite
It's
in
great.
the world.
It's
And
great.
every time I'm here, there's some people who've come to see me every time I've been here, and some people
Mhm.
who, like, every time there's people who are like, I've never heard of you. It's my first time at Acme. It's my first time at
Oh.
a comedy club. It's my first time seeing you, hearing of you. Like, people aren't really famous until my mom has heard of them. You know what I mean? So I've been to her, famous since birth. But for anyone else outside myself, she only, she's not a comedy nerd. She's not. She knows the people. Here's a fun story. During the pandemic, during the lockdown phase, no live comedy shows for a while. I was doing a lot of Zoom shows and Instagram live shows, and just wherever I could perform, electronically, I was better than nothing. It wasn't a real live comedy show, but there was a lot of fun. It was like doing podcasts all the time, or like performance art pieces. Like, is anything happening? Is anybody out there? And, connecting with people as we could. My mom learned to use all the technology. I became her activity throughout the pandemic. She would be on Instagram, on Zoom. And after I do a show with, myself and a few friends, like my friend Liz Glazer, a wonderful comedian,
Right. Yep.
we would do a lot of live shows, live stream shows together. So after we would do a show, my mom would tell me the next day, she's like, here's my top 5 favorite comedians. And she would tell, it would be like me, number 1, and then like Liz, number 2, and then, oh, your friend Dan Wilbur, who is just the other people that were on the show, the front of mind people. So like, for example, now my mom she's seen Seinfeld live. We've gone to see Myq Kaplan on Broadway a few times.
Right.
We went to see Paul Reiser, one of my favorite first stand-up special I ever saw that I remember in full. I was 13 years old. It was like called 3.5 Blocks from Home. Incredible, still on YouTube, holds up to this day from 30 plus years later. We saw him live in 2022 for my birthday. And it was incredible. We were like, he's hilarious. He's still wonderful. Just put out a new special for the first time in over 30 years, I think, last year, the year before. And so the day after we saw that special, after we saw that performance of Paul Reiser, my mom said, here's my new top 5. Number 1, Myq Kaplan. Number 2, Paul Reiser. A dark horse candidate. He wasn't even in the running, 2 days earlier. Number 3, Myq Kaplan. Number 4, then she's like 4 and 5 tied, Seinfeld and your friend Liz Glazer. And
There you go.
then she told me, she's like, and please don't spread this around because I don't want to getting back to Seinfeld that I prefer Paul Reiser. So if anyone is listening and has any access, please keep it to yourself. But
funny.
yeah, the point is like live comedy. Of course, when the pandemic hit, I remember doing an interview and people were like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, that question doesn't even make sense anymore because I didn't see myself here. Nobody saw myself here. Nobody saw anything that was like 2 years before the pandemic. Very few people, other than, I don't know, pandemic scientists were like, oh, there might be a pandemic at some point.
Right.
Nobody knows the future. Nobody can make predictions accurately 100% of the time. They say people who have knowledge don't make predictions. People who make predictions don't have knowledge. I don't know. So I don't know is like the wisest thing anybody can say. For myself right now, since things opened up again, like at first it was tentative, but then the people who came out were like so happy, even happier, even more grateful for live comedy, in early, like mid 2021 into 2022. And now maybe it's getting quote unquote back to normal or forward to a new normal. Like myself, I'm, some shows I go, like I did some shows in Kansas City last weekend or 2 weeks ago with, I was opening for Emo Phillips, and he's incredible and his fans are incredible. And those were wonderful shows. And the club was full. And then I did like my own show just on an off night, just booked a few nights in advance, and a few people came out, and I can have a great time in a room with just 2 other people. I love it. And then I can have, sometimes you're performing for hundreds or thousands, sometimes for dozens or singles, And so I think I am the main ingredient of how I experience what is going on outside of myself. I think that's probably true for everyone. We look outside and we're like, oh, how was the show? Sometimes a comedian has a show and you're like, I didn't really like that show. But then everyone in the audience is like, that was my favorite show. I've never seen a show like that. And then I might listen back to the set and I'll be like, oh, actually, yeah, I just had like one thing that, your hair is like a bit out of place, nobody else notices it. Nobody else notices anything, but one thing keeps you in your head self-conscious. But later you're like, oh, what was I even talking about? Like, like a child's drawing, there's this artist, writer, teacher named Linda Barry who says, how old do you have to be to make a bad drawing, right? You're a 2-year-old, you make any drawing, nobody's like, that's bad. You're like, 2-year-old, it's incredible you're doing it. But at what point should the self-consciousness kick in? And like, as an adult, as an artist, as a comedian, a lot of people are trying to tap back into that, young, that childlike wonder, that beginner's mind, to that just pure creative spirit. So the question of how the comedy lands, I don't know anything that's going on outside myself, but I'm okay.
It all works out.
In conclusion, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite things about you in the world, because you come in and you light it up. I love that. You know what's amazing? The whole time you were talking, I was thinking about it. 1986, when I started at KQRS, went in there. Dave Hamilton is the guy who hired me, the program director. And we were talking about this one day. And I said, well, why don't we just start getting some comedians on? They said, comedians don't go on the radio. In 1986, they're talking about it.
Wow.
People don't like hearing comedians on. I said, what do you mean? And Dave said, no, I think you're right. We should get comedians on the show because nobody had comedians. This is, 40 years ago almost. So all of a sudden, a lot of these people came along and became, well, as a matter of fact, our first Vegas show that we did was that late 80s.
Oh God, yeah, probably.
Louis Anderson showed up with, I think, 24 dozen donuts for the crowd and all the rest of it. Something like Krispy Kreme donuts. But my career has been built on comedians coming on my show. There were other parts of the show that people liked, but the comedians were huge. And back in 1986, don't have comedians on. People don't like that. Like, what? Why? Well, because they can't see him. Like, what?
That is really incredible. First, this is too late, but a joke. It almost went by. Louis Anderson showed up with 24 dozen donuts, and he brought some for the audience. Anyway, good night, everybody. I think he would probably enjoy that. Can't say. I'll speak for him. But yeah, I think that's so interesting because, like, when I started doing comedy in the early 2000s, like comedy specials were rare. Like it was just it was a very special thing. Like that, if you had an HBO, like Carlin had HBO specials, like those were like the gold standard, but that wasn't even something that anyone was really like, oh, I should have an HBO special. Everyone, like a comedy album was like, oh, that's accessible. Like Comedy Central Records was just starting, and I like collected, I'd go to just record stores and be like, oh, is there comedy? I mostly took in comedy. Like obviously it was on TV through the 80s and 90s. You had like Caroline's Comedy Hour and like Evening at the Improv, and like they were like, oh, let's try to capture this thing, this live thing, and put it in this little box, and people of course loved it. And then that was part of what led to like the oversaturation and the bust of the boom. And then but there's always these cycles that go. But so when I was starting, it was like in this kind of new booming era where it was just like, oh yeah, like there's people like listening to to me, of course, there's wonderful physical comedians. If you just kind of you can't listen to a mime. You can't like get the full effect of like a Jim Carrey, rubber face show if you're not looking at him. But for so many of like the greatest comedians, like, you can watch a Carlin special. You can listen to a Carlin album. Like the albums capture so much of what's going on. Like, so that is such a fascinating thing to hear that, oh yeah, you can't see the comedian. What do you got to do? Like,
they thought.
That's one of those things that always mystified me about Howard Stern's show. It's always like, ladies and gentlemen, we have a stripper in here. She's definitely not wearing any clothes. Trust me on this one.
That's like true.
It's like you have a stripper on an audio only show and you're describing what she's doing. It just doesn't make any sense.
Do you know that's so funny? And clearly, Howard Stern, and whatever happened to him didn't work at all
for a while.
But do you know, you reminded me, there's a Brian Regan album. I think, he's had one of my favorites, numerous specials you can watch, but also his first thing that came out was just an album. Like I think Brian Regan Live is what it was called. Very uncreative. Like, come up with a better title, Brian. I get it. Who is it? What's happening? But he had another album a few years later, and I remember it was like a huge, maybe an arena or just like a gigantic audience, like roaring. Like he was a big star at the time, and people loved him, rightly so. And he opened the album just purely audio only. He's like, I think I'm gonna open this by doing a backflip and landed on my pinky. I'm about to do it, everybody. There I go. Did a backflip, landed on the pinky. Oh, I'm back into that. And like that was like, clearly just a beautiful, like an innovative, idea. Dimitri Martin did a thing on his first album also where he's like, now I'm gonna do some jokes where it's important that you know what I look like when I'm doing them. But I'm gonna have a friend of mine tell you what I look like. So I'm gonna say, and then he told a joke, something like, so I went to I got a haircut, and I guess I must have said like, give me the gay Beetle, and like you don't even need to like you can imagine what he's saying.
Right.
But then Leo Allen, his friend, comes on the microphone and says, for context, Dimitri looks like a gay beetle. Okay. So like clearly you can do so many things with like, you know, the auditory art
Sure.
forms, like, you know, like comedy at its essence, a lot of the time is mute. There's a musicality to it. You know, every great comedian like Mitch Hedberg, I really do think I've been writing some pieces about Mitch Hedberg jokes and like the philosophical implications of them in a newsletter I've been putting out for this year. And I love it so much. I really think that the reason that like so many comedians, like compared to musicians, like you can go to a band that you love and you'll be sad if they don't play your favorite song, right? You want to hear the hit that you've listened to that means something to you, you're nostalgic for. But if you go to see a comedian that you love and they only do jokes that you've heard, for the most part, you'd be like, oh, like I've heard that one. The joke, the surprise isn't there. But for Hedberg, I feel like he has like transitioned into like a musicality kind of place where his jokes are like songs because of like his delivery, his cadence, his essence is infused into all of this. And so when I can listen to his albums over and over, even though I know how they go and I can sing along to them, but I'm just like, I love, and so that's like another level of thing. But it's all you can watch him, you can watch his specials, but you can listen to him and it just, then your imagination kicks into gear. And like for any of the things we've been talking about, nobody's like listening to Howard Stern or listening to Hedberg or listening to Carlin or listening to Brian Regan being like, if only I knew what it looked like, you know, like the sounds are, you know, God said, let there be light first, but he said it with sound. So
maybe you just thought it.
Yeah, that could be.
But they didn't have a word for thinking to yourself.
You're right. I wasn't there. And God,
we'd have to ask a priest or something.
Yeah.
Or actually, I guess that would be a rabbi. Yeah.
My last name is Kaplan. That does come etymologically from chaplain. So I am the closest thing we have here to clergy. So I'll say
that's very true.
Thank you.
You can hang around for a while, I hope.
Please.
Magnificent. Got to take
I have a show at 7. Yeah, I got to be out by 7 p.m.
Okay, so you're at Acme tonight at 7.
Yes.
And then tomorrow night.
7 and 9:30 tonight and tomorrow.
And tonight and tomorrow, 7 and 9:30. I got to going into break. I love Acme. It is one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite place to go see comedy. We used to go to the what's the name of the place down in West Palm Beach again?
The Improv.
Oh, the Improv. Yeah, there was an Improv, but they tore it down.
Well, they connected it to the Kravis Center. Have you ever performed out of
not
that area?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've been in that area, but not at that particular venue.
Okay.
We just saw one because I've known Nick Swardson for how many, 25 years, something like that.
Yeah.
A really good friend of the family. Andy, you've known Nick Swardson since you were a little kid.
A long time.
But yeah, he appeared there. It's a nice venue.
Cool.
I mean, that Improv was great though, because it was surrounded by really good restaurants and all
bars.
that stuff. Bars,
but
restaurants.
It was getting a little rowdy sometimes.
I guess
they'd have acts that would come in, and it's like the whole place where you'd be downtown and be like, where am I?
A lot of guns being carried around. It's like, no, let's not do
maybe
that.
we should go home.
All right, we'll take a break. Be right back. Myq Kaplan tonight, tomorrow night, 7:30 and 9. Wait a minute, 7 o'clock and 9:30.
Yeah,
I got that wrong for about 40 years now. 7 and 9:30. Let's talk a second about my bank. That'd be North American Banking Company. As a business owner, you're always looking for opportunities to grow, and that's where North American Banking Company can help. Their business banking team offers tailored solutions, whether you're expanding your team, opening a new location, or upgrading equipment. Because they're locally owned, loan decisions are made right here in the Twin Cities, which means faster approvals and more flexibility to meet your needs. If you're ready to take your business to the next level, why not bank with my friends at North American Banking Company? Visit nabanco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Make you uncomfortable. Sometimes the anxiety for wondering if you saved enough can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that you could ease those tensions in just 48 minutes? My guy, Josh Arnold, Mr. Money Talk, can sit down with you and get you on the right track for your financial future. Josh has navigated it all when it comes to uncertain market and economic conditions, and he'll always provide straight talk. Never sugar-coated advice on how to reach the finish line with your retirement goals. Don't let your financial worries give you an ulcer or keep you from calling Josh right now. His 48-minute no-obligation consultation could be just what you need to feel better about your future. Call Josh today at 952-925-5608. Set up your free 48-minute no obligation consultation. That's 952-925-5608. Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC Security Investment Advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments must involve risk. You know that. All comments and opinions of Josh Arnold's do not constitute investment advice. I am a paid endorser. It's time for Wellshire Alzheimer's and Dementia Care Facilities. Wellshire Alzheimer's and Dementia Care Facilities, the memory care we're talking about here. A place where your loved one will live with pride and dignity. If you care deeply about someone in your life, Wellshire is the place I highly recommend. Wellshire is a memory care focused facility, has a full nursing team, always staffed within the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have never used or relied on any staffing agencies. Wellshire of Medina is now accepting elderly waivers after 12 months of private pay. I know them personally, and they are a family-owned local company, conveniently located right in Medina and Bloomington. They're the best staff memory care facility in the state. Wellshire has a robust community with activities 7 days a week. If your loved one is in need of a memory care facility, please get in touch with my friends at Wellshire. Set up a tour or learn more at wellshiremn.com. That's WEALSHIREMN.com.
Never seen you looking so bright, my funky one.
Funky one. What do you think of that? Has anybody ever called you their funky one?
This is the first.
That's the
You know, when you were
first time.
talking about the visuals versus listening, auditory, it's kind of sensations there. I was thinking about all of the early radio shows with the little sound effects. and all that
Foley
stuff.
artists. right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
right.
I remember, I think it was National Public Radio had a murder mystery,
Mm.
a radio show. And
Oh, yeah.
as a teenager,
Yeah.
I used to go over to my friend Peggy Danette's house and we would listen to it. And everybody would just shut up.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, we were,
Yep.
you know, that wasn't really like our generation at all, but it was just so interesting to hear
Oh,
stuff like
yeah.
that. It was like a brand new situation.
It's that's so interesting how, every generation so far, certainly in the past 100 years, there have been so many technological innovations happening so much faster compared to like thousands of years ago. They're like the wheel and they're like, we're good for a while. But like now,
There you
like
go.
in the past, 100, 150 years, the car, the airplane, the television, the radio, today, like virtual reality and AI. But like, at any point, like it was, I remember in our lifetime, like Wi-Fi on planes, like, wow, incredible,
Right.
but at any point, go back and we're like, well, yeah, of course, we've had that for however, but at any point, all the things that we've had for quote unquote forever, like we're new,
Yep.
new
Right.
and exciting.
Mhm.
Like when here's a core memory and like a family story in my home. Like I grew up an only child and I loved watching like the Muppets, let's say. And I remember one time we got home late and we hadn't set the VCR to record, which is already like what a for gratitude, like that we have the capacity to record things.
Yeah.
Like just 10 years earlier, 20 years
Right.
earlier, if you miss it, it's
You miss
gone.
it,
It's just
yeah.
It's
all
never
it's
coming
in the
Wait for
moment.
repeats.
But we came home and I was like, rewind my life. And my mom like remembered that and she brings it up. She's like, that's one of her favorite memories of a thing I ever said. I'm like 7 years old, 5 years old. I'm like, and she's like, I'm sorry, we can't rewind your life. But today, in this day and age, like we essentially can be like, oh, I didn't like rewind the DV. We can almost rewind everything,
Right.
and now, and we don't, there's always something to be, grateful for and or annoyed by, those
Right.
are like the thing my mom would say that her dad would say, a repeated favor becomes an obligation. You do a favor for somebody, you pick them up, and then they're like, well, now then you don't pick them up, then they're mad at you. And you're like, oh, I was just trying to offer you a bonus, a nice thing, and now then it becomes an obligation. So something that becomes like a helpful tool, like a new technology, a new thing, we're like, all right, well, now we have it. So like, what have you done for me lately?
Yep.
Society, technology, things. So I always do my best to be, look back in gratitude.
It was one of my dad's life lessons. He's like, yeah. So if you give somebody $1 and they don't even want the $1, but you say, please take this $1. I really want you to have this $1. So they take it. And then next week, you give them $1. They'll protest a little less, but they'll take the $1.
Mhm.
Third week, you give them another $1. Fourth week, you walk by and they go, where the hell's my $1?
there you go.
This is
That
such
was
a-
my, that's a household I grew up in.
That's so fascinating because, like, who is the person at the beginning that, like, why is a person like, look, I know better than you know. I'm gonna get you need this dollar. And you're like, look, hey man, I don't even want the dollar. But, okay, like what a funny interaction that began the whole thing. Yeah. I
Is
love it.
comedy as important as now as it's always been in people's lives?
I think that, I mean, short answer, yes. Long answer, I'll fill up the rest of the time. Like, sincerely, I think that, that comedy and art, I think comedy is a subcategory of art. And I think that art has this, Stephen Sondheim said, Stephen Sondheim, the great composer of musicals, like what genius. And he said something like, I'm paraphrasing, he said it better probably, but that like art is the way that humans create order out of the chaos. Like there's chaos all around where like just shapes and sounds and colors and sensations and like what is anything? You come into the world a baby, you don't know how to differentiate anything until your parents like are like there are words for certain things and there's not words for other things, but these are things and this is how it works. And like then you grow up and you're like, well, they didn't know what they were talking about. Like, oh, it's actually, we're teaching kids like Columbus discovered America. It's like there were people here, but he discovered it, that kind of thing. And eventually, you use your senses, you use your consciousness, you use your experience to figure things out for yourself. And art is I think it has always been like in whatever form, sometimes like stand-up comedy is a relatively newer in the grand, like stand-up comedy hasn't existed for, didn't exist in ancient Greece in the form that it is now, or in ancient China, like, but there's always been some kind of storytelling, around the fire. And there's always been music and dance, like there's always been ways that humans are like, what's going on? I don't know, but this feels good. This looks good. This sounds good. And so, yeah, I think that stand-up comedy specifically has been a great boon, whether it's, people actively like, yelling about, the government and the corporations like Carlin or what have you, or whether it's Brian Regan, who has been more like, hey, look, let's just have a silly, joyful time and, forget about whatever else is going on outside this room right now. Or whether it's like Maria Bamford talking about her struggles with mental health and mental illness in ways that if you're like, wow, I've never experienced anything like that, that's like fascinating to learn. Or people who are like, wow, that's exactly what I'm experiencing as well. And I think that art and comedy has like a great power to, for connection and communion, which I think is, of course, like that's, since the Big Bang, if you believe in that. My understanding is we were all there in one point, the whole universe in one hot little thing. And then we're like, this is a little warm. Let's spread out a little bit. And then boom. And then we're all heading out. And then, we're all in some ways incomplete, but we're all seeking, whether it's, a life partner, friendship, other human beings to see us and hear us and learn who we are and understand each other. And we're like, what's going on? I don't know, but we're here together. So I do think that comedy and art have always fulfilled that function. And until we are all, I think it'll only become unnecessary when everyone is a divinely enlightened, omniscient Buddha. Once we get there,
good luck.
then we won't. Yeah, I'm working on it.
Good luck on that
Good
one.
luck on that one is indeed the deal. Comedy in people's lives. Do people know how important comedy is in their lives?
That's a great question. I think some people, yes. And some people would need, maybe don't have as much of the language to describe that. But so maybe they don't know, like, I have a friend who in college studied anthropology, and he told me about a culture where they did not have a word for the concept of music. And the reason they didn't have the word for it was that music infused their society, like in a way that in our society, like music is separate. You go to your job and you're like, if you're just like working at an office, like music isn't necessarily an explicit part of it.
Sure.
But think about in court when like the judge comes in and the bailiff is like, oh yay, oh yay, oh yay, all rise, the court is now in session. And that's like a song. It's almost like a priestly thing, every
like a hymn,
exactly. And so in this particular society where they didn't have a concept of music, it was because that was everywhere. You go to the grocery store and it's a specific song that the customer sings to the person selling things, and they don't think of it as songs. They're just like call and response things. So I think that if that happens with music in certain societies, that's what's happening with comedy for some people in our society. Like there are people who are like, I don't like stand-up comedy, or I don't like comedy, or because they have a misconception of it. They've only seen one instance of it, and they were like, oh, that one was racist, so maybe comedy is all racist. And no, thank you.
Close-minded.
But they might love a funny musician, or they might love a funny dance troupe, or because every other art form has comedy in it. There's even a dramatic TV show or movie has funny moments, like
comic relief.
Almost everything out there. Like there is so much comedy and fun to be had. Like it with their love. I can't imagine a person who doesn't laugh or doesn't enjoy laughing at something, and they might not conceive of that as quote comedy, but I think that that's the source, the what's at the spirit of comedy is present in hopefully everyone's lives, unless maybe they're a sociopath,
I hope. Well, I'll give you an example,
please.
So here it is, Friday. We got the 3.5 day weekend now because Memorial Day.
Yes, of course.
On Monday, but I got up this morning. First thing I think of is doing the podcast. You think of work first thing. First thing that came to mind is made me very happy that you were going to come in today, because I'm not making this up or lying to you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I'm going to see Myq Kaplan for the first time in a bit, because we go back and forth. And when we're in Florida, you should come in. We're down there.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah. But all of that, I guess the prime example, because I've always loved your comedy, no question about it. But many, many years ago on this show, Don Rickles came on. And Don Rickles was, to me, a genius, because I grew up in a very, very poor neighborhood with a hard edge to it. And him mouthing off to everyone was very funny to me.
Sure.
Right? So I'm talking to Don Rickles about this, that, and the other thing. And I said to Don, you did something outside of stand-up comedy and outside of, a lot of things that I will never, ever forget. He goes, what's that? And I said, you were on an episode of, I think it was Run for Your Life, an old television show. And it was called Down with Willie Hatch. He was a stand-up comedian in the show. He just one appearance. And showed how some people love comedians, some people hate comedians, all the rest of it. I said, I got to tell you, Don, your portrayal of the stand-up comedian on that show, Down with Willie Hatch, was brilliant. I loved it. It hit the nail on the head, and he started crying.
Wow.
It was very sweet.
Oh my God.
Comedians are always walking that edge.
I think that's what it is.
Between mania and hysteria.
But to see the legendary Don Rickles tear up because I gave him a compliment. Do you guys not get as many compliments as you should? I mean, God.
That's a great question. I have at least 1 to 3 stories to tell.
Wonderful.
One is, I don't know if you know Bo Burnham. He's I think a genius artist, whether he is a stand-up comedian or a comedian or a musician or a performance artist, whatever genre, he's a Bo Burnham. And like, I love one of his specials came out and I loved it so much. I think it was What? I think the name of the special was What? Several years ago. And I went on Twitter at the time. It was named Twitter at the time. And I went on the website currently known as X. And I tweeted at Bo, and I was like, this is a beautiful, work of art that you've created here. And he said, thank you. He like said something kind of downplaying it. And I was like, no, this is really good. And he was like, you are making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I think that
exactly what I'm talking about.
There is a fine line, and because here's the thing, a lot of comedians might have gotten into comedy because, for all kinds of reasons. There's no way to say every comedian did it for this reason. Mm-hmm. Whereas like this is a famous story between like Seinfeld and Gary Shandling. Like I think they were on Comedians in Cars, or I've seen them have this conversation multiple times. Mm-hmm. But Gary Shandling is saying something like, don't you think the best comedy, like most of it is just like a guy whose soul, like there's like a hole in it, and he's just doing everything he can to try to fill it, just try to really get at that core wound, and like comedy is the thing that can alchemize, like I'm paraphrasing, and then Seinfeld's like, can a guy just like doing comedy? And so he does comedy because he loves doing comedy, and he just does comedy, and that's how he gets good at comedy, and that's where great comedy comes from. And then Shandling says, I hear rage, Well, so I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that human beings, like, so I came from, so some people get into comedy because, like Shandling is pointing out, at least for himself, he felt that there was a need, there was a trauma, there was a lack that he was trying to figure out. That's why he got into Buddhism as well. He's like, I need something. I'm missing something. I'm suffering. How do I fix it?
Sure.
Whereas I came from like the other end of the spectrum. My family, only child, only grandchild. I was given compliments all the time. I was like the local
You were the
messiah.
handsomest boy in town.
Absolutely. I could be president. A Jewish person's never been president. I could be president. I could be the king of the world. Like, if anyone doesn't like what you have to say, they are the stupid ones, like, you are valuable. And like, so for me, when I started doing comedy, I had to deal with audiences who weren't my family. And I was like, well, why isn't everyone loving me immediately?
Reality check.
I had to, swing that pendulum back and forth to figure out the ideal equilibrium. There's a thing from the Talmud, a book or a collection of Jewish wisdom where one rabbi says, in one pocket I have a piece of paper that says the world was created for you, and in the other pocket I have a piece of paper that says you are nothing but ash and dust. And so the average of those two, like either one of those, they might be necessary. Like if your head's too big, remember you're nothing. If you think that you're nothing, remember your experience. You're the center of your own universal experience. Like there's a Zen master who once was asked, do you believe in God? And he said, if you do, I don't. And if you don't, I do. Like there isn't just one objective answer. And so the question, I think, yes, a lot of comedians, here's another fun story. Jesse Joyce?
Oh, yeah.
Jesse Joyce, we met in probably like 2008, and we were in this festival together, the Great American Comedy Festival in Nebraska. And then 2009, I filmed a Comedy Central half hour, my first, this biggest thing that happened to me at the time. And I ran to Jesse at a show, and he was like, hey, man, congratulations. I heard that you just filmed your half hour. How did it go? And, the right answer would have been like, great, thank you, and the end. But I was like, oh, thank you. I mean, it was really, there was a lot to it. And like a couple times, like I stumbled a little bit, but they said you could redo it and they'll edit it. And so I think it all worked out. And I went on for however many minutes, and Jesse was very kind and patient. And at the end, he was like, thank you, man. Like next time you could just say thank you. But and so that was a valuable lesson I learned, like depending on who you're talking to, when and where. I mean, I think what you did for Don Rickles, I think people do that. If you love someone, if someone's work touches you, if you have any memory, a positive experience with someone, I do that all the time. If I think of a friend's joke that I haven't seen them in months, I'll be like, hey, I just thought of your joke, and it made me laugh again, and it made me experience joy. Just like anyone, even if you're not like your friends, your people in your life, anybody that you ever have a thought of like, I miss this person, I love this person, I care about this person. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who get into their own head, into their own social media feed, into their own business, and they're like, it's been so long, they wouldn't want to hear, but yes, do it, do anything. So I'm on your side. And yeah, maybe Don Rickles, maybe everybody, because of how incredible an insult comedian he became, people thought the way to show him love was to insult him. So you went the other way, and it really, shocked the system. And do you want to hear, I was in a room with Don Rickles once. We were watching a musical together, like not together. We were just we were watching the musical. It was in probably like 2009, give or take a year. I talk about this in a comedy album because it's just the true story of Bye Bye Birdie, and it was John Stamos was the star, and Gina Gershon was the female lead, and it was in what do you call it? Like before it opened up in previews, and so they were on Broadway. It was 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and the set breaks, like something goes wrong 20 minutes in, and they close the curtains, and John Stamos just comes out, and he's like, sorry, they're working on fixing it. It'll just be a little bit. So they sent me out here to just talk to you for a little while, but I'm an actor. I don't have my lines. Bob Saget's in the audience. Do you want to come up here, Bob? And Bob comes up, and he doesn't have a microphone. So yeah, he tells some jokes into the microphone that's in John Stamos's hair. And realizes very quickly that his act isn't appropriate for a Wednesday 2 p.m. matinee. And he goes and sits down. And actually, before that had happened, I tell the story in the reverse order because for comedic power, it works better that way. But actually, right before that, John Stamos had said, Don Rickles is in the audience. Don, would you like to come up here and help me entertain the people for a little while? And Don Rickles said, no. So it's like
No.
the most beautiful like insult comedy, like 2 letters, 1 syllable. I was like, I'm watching a master at work here, you know? So yeah, I mean, he became, as any great comedian does, became like, he's his own genre. He's his own thing. But he's also a human being who can be moved by kind words.
He, honest to God, said something once on stage that if anybody else had said it, I would have been pissed off at him, and I hate them. But the fact that Don Rickles said it, it was hilarious. He's talking to the audience. Like he played the audience beautifully. He's talking to this guy and blah, blah, blah. And this guy sitting next to his wife, and his wife has a very large nose. I mean, like a very large nose. And he's talking to the guy, and blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, he looks to the left. He goes, "Who's that next to you?" And he goes, "Oh, that's my wife." "Was your wife an eagle?" Anybody else says that, I don't think it's funny.
No.
Don Rickles says it. It's hilarious. Why is that?
It's
in my head.
Yeah, you know, it must be like, I feel like roast comedy in general, you know, the prototypical, the ideal of it, like the platonic ideal of roast comedy is where people actually love each other and they say the worst things about each other because they know each other so well, and they know that they're not intending to hurt each other's feelings. They know they're actually doing it out of love, and saying those mean things demonstrates how much they know each other because of how much they care about each other. In modern roast, sometimes you have people who don't know each other, and then you just have, they don't know that they love each other. They might not love each other. They're just saying mean things to each other, and it doesn't, like, you know, even like Nikki Glaser, one of the greatest roast comedians, one of the greatest comedians. She is a friend, and I think she is a kind person and hilarious. And to hear her in interviews talk about the anxiety that goes into, she's like crafting these perfect, beautiful, insulting jokes for people who have consented to receive them. And like, but people don't know how powerful, you know, a joke can be. And if you don't know the person, but like, I know, I love that Nikki is like, if you come to my show and you get offended or you don't like a thing that I say, I'll refund you. Cause like, I'm saying the things I say because I want you to enjoy them. And if you're not enjoying them, then I'm not the right comedian for you. And it's not like, I don't want to trick you. I want everyone to know what they're getting into. And so I think that going back to the spirit of the roast and the spirit of Don Rickles became like, his heart was clear. Like, we're like early Sarah Silverman, when she was saying jokes that on paper you'd have been like, these are, you know, don't say this to a human being out loud. Like, this is racist or sexist or homophobic. And, you know, she has grown and shifted and changed over the years. But even at the time when she was doing, it was clear it was satire. It was clear it was a parody. She would never say that to a real human being without anybody knowing where her heart lay. And so I think that's what's going on with Don Rickles, is he became so famous, so known to everyone for, he's a warm, I mean, Mr. Warmth. That was his nickname. And clearly it was both an ironic nickname because of the vile things that came out of his mouth, but they came out of his mouth in letter, but not in spirit. Because truly, if you had asked him, like, hey, you hurt somebody's feelings, how do you feel about that? He wouldn't be like, hooray. That, like, he's not trying to hurt people's feelings. He's trying to create the most joy. And the tool that he had at his disposal was to, like you said, play the audience like they were his instrument, and hit, like, the bow that he's like bowing them with is just, you know, mean words with, you know, like cold hands, warm heart kind of thing, you know, like his heart, like cold words, warm intent.
I got to take a break. You have 10 more minutes?
I do.
God, you're very generous with your time. No question about it. We'll be right back right after this, ladies and gentlemen. Extraordinary is ordinary in Sioux Falls. Just look at the numbers. In addition to having a business-friendly tax environment with no personal or corporate state income taxes, Sioux Falls is growing as a large, well-educated workforce. Cost of living is low with a central location and developed industrial parks. So is your cost of doing business. Contact the Sioux Falls Development Foundation to connect with tools and resources to stop searching for a perfect business site and start growing in Sioux Falls. Number 1 most affordable city, according to Empower. Number 2 best job market, Smart Asset. Number 3 in economic strength, according to, I'm going to prove that to you right here, by the way. Number 3 in economic strength, Polycom. Sioux Falls ranks the first in the nation for total bank assets. Now, if you could guess bank assets in Sioux Falls, do you have a guess?
No.
Do
Okay.
you know what a bank asset is?
Is I'm looking for a number? We looking for a number?
Yeah, it's a number.
100 billion.
100 billion. See, that's what I would have guessed. Sioux Falls ranks first in the nation for total bank assets at $3.5 trillion.
All right. I was only off by one from B to tr, you know?
Yeah, exactly. South Dakota is one of the most business-friendly states in the country, and the place to take advantage of those incentives is in Sioux Falls. As the state's largest city with a metro population over 290,000, Sioux Falls has low business costs, high quality of life. There's no state or corporate or personal income tax, no inheritance tax, and no limits to what your business can achieve. It's the number one best small city for business and careers, according to Forbes, number 2 best state business tax climate Tax Foundation, and the number 5 top state for e-commerce, according to Nexus.
Many car dealers try to create an extreme sense of urgency. Does anybody really buy it?
We gotta sell 100 cars by Saturday to get the boss off the roof. Or, I mean, you'll never see these rebates again. And oh yeah, your trade will never be worth more.
Really? I asked Jim Paul from Valley Buick GMC in Apple Valley and Valley GMC in Hastings his thoughts.
I don't even know what to say. I hope folks are smarter than that.
Has there really ever been a time when it was urgent?
Probably not, but this tariff environment might be a first. Valley has several hundred pre-tariff units on the ground. Who knows what's going to happen with the tariffs, but these are really safe buys. Going forward, Valley's committed to make whatever the situation is as painless as possible, like we've always done.
Where can we find you then?
Get them pre-tariff. Hurry, hurry, hurry. When they're gone, they're gone. And man,
At a Valley store in Apple Valley or Hastings or valleycardealers.com. Certainly not on a roof.
Does thinking about retirement make you uncomfortable? Sometimes the anxiety from wondering if you've saved enough can be overwhelming. What if I told you you could ease those tensions in just 48 minutes? My guy, Josh Arnold, Mr. Money Talk, can sit down with you and get you on the right track for your financial future. Josh has navigated it all when it comes to uncertain market and economic conditions, and he'll always provide straight talk, never sugar-coated advice on how to reach the finish line with your retirement goals. Don't let your financial worries give you an ulcer or keep you from calling Josh right now. His 48-minute no-obligation consultation could be just what you need to feel better about your future. Call Josh today, 952-925-5608. Set up your free 48-minute no-obligation consultation. That's 952-925-5608. Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC Security Investment Advisor. Past performance, no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk. All comments and opinions of Josh Arnold do not constitute investment advice, and I am a paid endorser.
Have you ever seen a squawk stairs? Well, look at mine.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Myq Kaplan in studio with us, 7 o'clock and 9:30 tonight at Acme, one of the greatest comedy clubs, if not the greatest comedy club in America. No question. We've got a bunch more now in the market, don't we? Comedy clubs, not as big
New
as
ones?
Acme. Yeah, I think there are a couple.
Well, there's the
moving
House
around.
of Comedy at the
House
Mall of
Comedy
America.
Mall of America, yeah.
It's new by some definitions.
Not.
Well, I suppose, yeah, compared to Acme.
Compared to Acme, it is new, yes.
I don't know if there's. I
I
don't know
mean-
if there's any new ones. Don't know.
New ones are all breweries, I find.
Oh,
right,
that's
right,
true. A
right.
lot of
They build a
breweries do it.
brewery and
Yeah.
then they have a stage
true.
so they can
Yeah.
have comedians on. Although is that still a thing? Are they building breweries every block still?
I don't know.
I
But
think they're still very popular in Minnesota.
people like
Yeah.
beer, I
Yes,
think.
They
sure
do.
do.
They enjoy a
Do they
nice
still
brew.
like beer here in Minnesota?
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
Also, do you guys know, have you seen any of the Don't Tell comedy shows popping up? Do you know about these?
No.
Mm-mm.
I don't
So
think so.
it is a newer organization that there's like 2 things that they do. One is like in cities all over the country, like in Minneapolis, I'm sure they have them. If you go to Don't Tell, I'm not a paid endorser of don'ttellcomedy.com, but
Right.
like the structure of the show is you're like, okay, there's going to be a show like this Friday, let's say. You don't know where it is, but they give
Oh,
you a general
pop-up?
part of town. Yeah,
Ah.
they do it in like a place that's closed. I've done a bunch in like fitness centers or like gyms, you know, like in New
Oh.
Jersey, or like I've done them in California. Like they have them everywhere, and they, you know, it's like a franchise. So like they have different people running them, and different ones might have different quality, but they just get comedians. They don't tell you the lineup, they don't tell you the location, they just tell you the time and the
Mhm.
general region, and then day day of show, you find out where to go, you watch a fun show, and it's kind of like, one of those like a restaurant where you like eat in the dark, it's like a gimmick, but like they're delivering you a quality product, but just like with the gimmick being they just don't tell you anything about it. It's like, oh, it's like a surprise party for yourself that you're planning. And then they also do filmings. Like, so for the past many years, they've been like every, year or so, or a couple of times a year, they'll just do a taping and they'll just invite comedians. So they have a YouTube channel and there's just a bunch of, you can discover new comedians. If you go to Don't Tell Comedy's YouTube channel and be like, oh, people who it's kind of, taking the place of like, there aren't as many late night shows that are breaking new comedians since Conan left. Like Colbert doesn't have them all the time. Like the Tonight Show does, but like Kimmel doesn't necessarily, you can find them, but every however often you can get like a new batch of like 5 to 10 minute sets they do on these Don't Tell. So I feel like that is something that in lots of different markets are popping up, especially like there's in Delaware, there's like no full-time comedy club that has shows like headlining shows every week in Delaware. Small, like Wilmington used to have one, I hear, but now the Don't Tell comedy scene in Delaware, I went down there in January and did like 2 shows at a comic book store on Friday night, and it was packed with 80 people at each show, just filling the store. And then in like the back room of a restaurant on like the shore part of Delaware, the next night 2 shows then. So like fills the function of a comedy club. Like, I guess it's like the Uber of comedy. They're like, yeah, you don't need to hire a cab. You don't need just show up. Well, somebody's here. They'll get you there.
How much notice do you have so that you can get there?
What's that?
How much notice does the comedian have?
Oh, the comedian, sometimes they're booked. I think like for some of the ones like in New Jersey, I live in New York, I can get to New Jersey.
Sure.
Like I'll put my avails in every month usually.
Oh, okay.
And then for New Jersey or Delaware. And then if I'm like traveling to another town and I have like nights off, then maybe like some of them might book out like months in advance.
Okay.
But a lot of them are like, a week of or a couple weeks before or the month.
Did they tell you to not post it on social media so it's still a surprise?
Generally, yeah, I think that's the general vibe of it. Okay. Like I mean, I can definitely I think a lot of times I'll ask them like, can I tell like my fans in the area if it's a different, it's like I'll privately let people know that I'll be in a place, but yeah, for the most part you don't publicize when and where a show is going to be or that you're on it. And it's kind of nice because like a lot of times to book yourself to do comedy, they're like, can you get people here? Can you
I'd be a little worried. I'd be like, what if nobody shows up?
Yeah, but they've been like a slowly growing, business model. Like sometimes they'll even, I understand, like sometimes they'll do 2 shows in a night, but even if they could have like 2 3/4 full shows, they might only book 1 show to make sure it's just packed, sold out, give everyone a sold out comedy experience and continue to, build their positive word of mouth.
I remember when COVID was going on, we had Judy Golden here.
Yeah.
And she was running around on the back of a pickup truck in parking lots.
Oh yeah.
She's like, I gotta work. I can't stand it.
Comedy
I gotta
finds
work.
a way. Yeah.
I love Judy. She's
Yeah, we haven't seen her in a while.
Incredible.
yeah, she is. She's wonderful. She liked Andy a lot.
Oh, I said Judy and the dog jumps up.
Oh, Judy. Yeah.
Because we call him Judy all the time.
Judy.
Sorry.
Judy.
Sorry,
That's
not you,
sweet.
Judy. A different
Where do
Judy.
you live in New York?
Since for a year and a half, I was living in Brooklyn for about 15 years,
Okay.
and then we had to leave because our building wasn't up to code in some. The guy was like, we got to change the the heat from gas to electric, and that's going to take a year, and it's not going to have any heat. So we actually traveled for. I didn't have a home for about 5 months. Went to Edinburgh for the Fringe Fest for all of August, and just had a week, 3 weeks in California, and came out here for a week and did shows at Acme. This was like mid 2023, but then late 2023 we found a place, my girlfriend and I, and we moved. We live in Chelsea now, like literally a block from Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
Nice.
it's wonderful.
So if there's any fallout there, if Taylor Swift gets sick, I can show up. I'm like,
that's true.
Easy
Yeah.
to fill in. Obviously.
You're there for anybody.
Yes.
We talked about 1986, when the year that my show started here. Kath and I lived at 20th Street and 2nd Avenue in New York and just loved it. I was just doing voiceover back then. And we got a call saying Andy was going to come. Andy, that's 39 years ago.
Andy called you up, yeah?
Yeah,
You
Andy
got a
called
call?
from the womb. From the womb, he called and said, look, I'll be coming. I said, I don't know about raising a baby in the middle of Manhattan, and I don't know about that.
It was different at that time. Like,
It was,
like the
yes.
beginning of our conversation. Like,
Yep.
what's comedy like now compared to what was New York City? Like, what was, even when I was going to Times Square when I was like, 17, 18 in college, and I was like, Times Square was very different than, the Disneyfied M&M store that it is now. So I can only imagine, the East Village, the Lower East Side, like very different.
Oh, it was wonderful. I just loved living in New York.
Amazing.
It's an amazing place. There's no question about that.
Well, we've been doing this podcast for how long?
20.
No.
Was it
No, it's like 13 years.
13 years?
There you go.
And
It'll be 13 years in August, I think.
Yeah. So you've been having comedians on for going back to KQ times. How
Yeah.
many years would you say?
From the very beginning, 1986.
Okay. So for 40 years.
Mhm.
Okay. So I've only been doing this with you. So I've seen this parade of comedians coming through here. And I remember there were some years right before COVID where I think we stopped having comedians on because it was just like
they were rough.
there was a different crowd there for a while. Everybody
For a
came
while,
in, you could
yeah.
tell that they were really high. They didn't want to be there. They had like a YouTube thing going and talking to, a boomer was just like way not what I want to
Yep.
be doing. You could tell they just hated being there, but Acme.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we just kind of stopped for a while.
I mean, I remember because I here's the thing about like morning radio, like used to be just a staple of like the comedian's weekend.
Yeah.
Sure.
When I began, like I headlined my first like out of New England gig in like 2010, I believe, like March 2010. Started in 2002, and then 2010 I went to Acme and Austin, Cap City in Austin. Came here for the first time in late 2010, right after I did Last Comic Standing. And then I started, doing a lot of clubs on the road. And you go to a club, and at the time, like they were like, okay, Thursday morning, 6 a.m. or Friday morning, 6 a.m. We booked you on this thing. I'm like, 6 a.m. for the people getting up at 5 a.m. and going to work, and they're going to come to a show at 11 p.m. Who knows? But obviously, it was a model that, worked for the people for a while, and they would give out tickets and just spread the word, and that was just a part of the thing. And so I know a lot of comedians might have gotten were tired, like you're not morning people, might have gotten, maybe Dave Attell stays up all night, comes in, then goes back, goes to bed. But I feel like that would be a great morning show hosted by people who stay up the night before, and you're like, all right, and now we're gonna crash. But I remember when, like, not every radio show is created equal as well. Like some you go on and they're like, who are you? What's going on? But like you come on your show and like you've done research and like, you know people and you watch their work and you develop relationships. And so I always love however many times I came here to first the radio show and then the couple times on the podcast. I remember one time was in your very home, I believe.
Yeah, it was in our house.
And, and it became, it was like a real cool relationship that developed. And so I like truly, this is honestly, like, I don't mean to Don Rickles you here, but what you did to him, I do to you. Like, I love coming on this show because you're kind and creative people who care about what you're doing, and you make a really hospitable environment. You're thanking me for being generous with my time. I mean, like, part of it is selfish because I'm having a good time. Like, sometimes you drive a half hour to be on the radio for literally 4 minutes, and they're like, so where are you going to be? You're going to be here this time. Tell me a joke real quick. And like, you got your Bob and Tom radios where like sometimes they're like, give us some jokes that you want to tell and we'll set you up for those jokes. And that's, you do a pre-interview and like, I don't mind that as well. And I go wherever I go, I'm happy to, lock into the system and engage with it and meet them where they are, like playing ping pong or tennis. It's fun to just keep hitting it back. But like here, like no preparation other than, being ourselves. Like you have questions, you have curiosities, conversation like winds wherever it goes. And it's really beautiful. So like the point is, when I got the email yesterday that you guys wanted me to come in, I was like, this is incredible. Like and I have such a, high opinion of myself because of my parents loving me so much,
There you go.
because of that. But, like a lesser man might have, all those like 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever the last time I came in before you stopped having comedians. And then the next time I came back to Acme, I'm like, am I doing the show? Am I doing this, the wonderful family show that I've come to like expect, like the favor that it was that became not an obligation, but like I looked forward to it. And then they're like, yeah, they're not having comedians on anymore. And I was like, oh, that's and
That's why.
I understand why
It wasn't you.
Yeah, no, I understand because of course, like all radio shows are not created equally. All comedians are not created equally. Like some comedians, like, might have been expecting like, oh, they're just going to want me to like do my bits in a situation that isn't that and try to just like, hey, everyone come to the show. Like, I love, like, of course, like there's an element to you go on a radio show and like, I hope that people who are listening will come to my shows this weekend.
Sure.
But that's a bonus. Like the real thing is like the spirit, the core is this, like, this is the thing that's happening right now. This is the art. This is the communion. And so,
well, that's very interesting that you say that, because I always thought when these guys would come in and they would act like they just hated being there and they were they were stinky. I mean, it's like, what are you?
You haven't bathed.
You're
in
gross.
5 days.
And you're in a studio. You do know what a podcast is, right? They're stinky, they're high. It's like, and they got this horse shit attitude. You're thinking, this is a genre that you can work on, and it's good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in entertainment, you should learn how to communicate.
One of my favorite this is one of my favorites, and one of my other favorite things about coming to work at Acme, the shows are incredible.
Phenomenal.
Have had 2 of them so far. Love them. Like, I get to do what I've prepared, and I get to experience new things arising in the moment. Yesterday in the afternoon, I did the Acme's podcast, the No Laugh Track podcast with Justin Sievers, and he's another like incredible like resource. Like he wasn't able to come to the show the night before, but he watched the tape of it the morning of before I came in, so he has information that he can like ask questions about, and we just have this really wonderful conversation every time I go on his show. Like, I go on it every time I've been here, so probably been on like at least 10 times, a dozen times, and every time I'm there I'm like, I should listen back, because I've come up with like a dozen new joke ideas based on the conversation, based on his questions and my answers. And so I do it's not early for me. I shower at night. I'm a night shower. So just to let you know, I'm not stinky and high. I showered last night and I got high last night, but now I am sober and generally clean and sober.
We don't mind a little high. Little high is okay.
Well, yeah, it'll slow me down to a human pace sometimes.
We will always want you to come in every time you're in town. Honest God.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again. And like I said, stand-up comedy has been a huge part of my career. Other than that one segment, that just got weird for a while.
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
New people, but please do come back. I'll take 1 minute break, come back, and we'll say goodbye.
All right.
Family owned since 1933. We're talking about Jack's, one of the great restaurants in the world, an original Minneapolis steakhouse, matter of fact. It's a place to celebrate and create memories for over 90 years, just minutes from Target Field. For a pre or post game meal, perfect prime rib, serving steaks, chops, fresh seafood. You can even net your own trout from Jack's Garden Stream and have it prepared for you minutes later. You can enjoy happy hour in the bar or on award-winning patio Wednesday through Sunday. Private party rooms from 25 to 275 people. Perfect for weddings, groom's dinners, business dinners, or all celebrations. And I love Billy. Billy's one of my best friends, has been for a long time. Weekend brunch Saturday and Sunday. Jack's, the godfather of Northeast. We are back to say
And
goodbye.
Don't forget, we have a new drawing for the $100 gift
Oh, yes, we
certificate
do.
to
Yeah,
Jack's
absolutely right.
Cafe
So-
starting today.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely
if at Silver St. Paul, if you're listening, email us. It's tombernardpodcast@gmail.com. We'll get the
How
gift
long
card out to you.
How long do we give them?
Yeah, I don't know.
If they don't respond before we yank it away,
I was
give
just
it to
thinking
someone
about
else.
that. I wonder. I mean, we're going to do our best to get in contact with him. You added him, right?
I did.
Added him.
I added him.
Okay.
Added him.
Well, I
yes.
mean, I would say at that point, I don't know, if he hasn't responded by Sunday, then that's like,
Well,
48 hours.
I would give people a week. I
No,
mean,
a
I'm not.
week.
I ignore social media all the time.
That's true, I suppose. That's true.
Well, the good news
Suppose.
is if they're not getting the message because they're ignoring social media, then the prize is they're happier.
Exactly.
Very true.
Very true. And Charlie in the chat wanted to
Albuquerque.
make sure we knew that at Indy today at 1:45 Eastern, which would be 12:45 Central.
Okay.
All 6 Wienermobiles will be racing for the first time ever.
Thank you, Charlie.
You know,
Really
that's
appreciate it.
important
Yeah.
information. Because I'm really happy about that for some reason.
Yeah, there you go. You got to come back soon again. It's great to see you, my friend.
The same.
We
Thank
just
you.
love it.
Thank
I
you.
love your passion for comedy.
Thank you.
I do not think the world would continue without comedy. You got to have it.
Love it.
No question. Come back soon.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
That'll do it. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Got a picture in my pocket reminds me of this one was before. Every time I hear the sing, reminds me how you talking